Garage bands. Man, they were everywhere in the U.S. during the 1960s. Affordable versions of instruments and equipment were readily available, some of them being quite good, actually. And they were even available through mail order if you had no local shop. So it was relatively inexpensive to put a band together. A vast majority of these bands went nowhere, of course, but a very small number farmed viable single artists and moved on to professional work, and even a smaller number of those bands went into the professional realm as groups. This is the story of one of those bands, the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and their million-selling U.S. #1 hit single, sung by a guy that wasn't in the band, singing lyrics written by other guys not in the band, and that ended up paying the band zero in royalties. Allow me to introduce you to a Burbank, California band named The Sixpence. Still in high school, they initially formed in 1965 and 66, and although they started out with 6 members, the final lineup for 67 was Ed King on guitar, Mark Weitz on keyboard, Lee Freeman on rhythm guitar, Gary LeVitro on bass, and Randy Soul on drums. All of the guys could sing to at least some extent, and the group had also written some original songs that were more musically diverse than those produced by other fledgling bands. By the end of 1966, the guys were good enough to snag a record contract. It was with a small independent label called All American Records, but it was a recording contract nevertheless. Beginning with the song Long Day's Care, backed with Can't Explain in the summer of '66, The Sixpence went on to release a few more singles over the next 10 months, but none of the discs caught on. In early 1967, an instrumental idea was being tossed around by Mark Weitz and Ed King. Mark experimented with an oriental-sounding progression that seemed to be a good intro and a section of alternating major 7th chords that sounded like a nice ending for a song. Ed put together a bridge in F-sharp for it and a guitar solo, but the piece had no melody or lyrics, and in fact, it didn't even have a title. But they took the idea to their next early March recording session at Art LeBeau's Original Sounds studio in Hollywood. In the studio, they ran through a quick demo of what they had put together for producer Frank Slay, and he liked it enough to have them lay down a rhythm track. Frank was producing another band at the time called The Rainy Days, which had a songwriter member named John S. Carter. And so Frank passed a copy of the rhythm track to John and asked him to write a melody and some lyrics. With the reported help of a collaborator named Tim Gilbert, John wrote a melody and 3 verses to go with the rhythm track. He made a demo tape of the composition using his guitar only and gave it to Frank. Back in the studio, a few days later, the completed but untitled composition was ready to record. The guys liked the lyrics. They were an intriguing mix of poetry and anti-establishment overtones, and the title Incense and Peppermints was agreed upon, but there was no decision yet on who was going to sing lead. Still, they decided to carry on with some run-throughs. One by one, each member stepped up to the vocal mic and sang a lead take over the rhythm track. Listening to the playbacks, though, none of the takes really sounded right. As things turned out, 16-year-old Greg Munford, a friend of the band, was just hanging around the studio that day, sitting on the floor in the corner, and the guys figured they had nothing to lose and asked Greg to give it a go. Much to the surprise of everyone present, Greg's take was the best playback of the lot. Now what? The immediate move was to ask Greg to join the group, but he wasn't interested in that. He had his own band and said no. So it was, winning the impromptu audition and agreeing to be part of the recording, that Greg Munford, a casual visitor in the studio and not a group member, ended up performing the lead vocals on the final master of Incense and Peppermints, with the other guys providing well-rehearsed background vocals. Remember, too, that at this point, the band was still named The Sixpence, a name that was proving to be problematical because at least one other band was using the same name, Sixpence, creating confusion in the marketplace. The guys came up with a new name, Strawberry, a word used as a nod to a Beatles hit song, and then And there you will see a button that says join. It's only 99 cents US, and you can stop at any time, but it gives you the priority over non-members in receiving responses from me. I also invite you to submit ideas regarding pop music from the 1950s through the 1970s. Just leave a comment on this video, or you can email me at theguitartrooper@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching.